Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we will learn about classes and object. Till now, what we have studied is the basic important features of Java. From this tutorial onwards, we will learn about the object-oriented approach. So now let's learn about classes and object via example, and then we will come back to the definition. Go to your Eclipse. Create a new package for the object-oriented approach. Create a new class in that. Select class, give it a name. We will be taking the example of employee, so we will write employee. Should I select the main method? No, in this we will not select the main method. Click finish. See, we have successfully created our first class. This is an empty class. Let's fill in some data. Double. The employee will have some salary. The employee will have some bonus, and the employee will have some vacations. So our total salary will be something like this: salary plus bonus minus vacations. See, this was the format which we were using in the main method. But while we are using the class, there is a proper format to declare a variable, to use those variables, and to perform the functions. So a class is something that contains your variables and functions. So we have declared our variables over here, but to perform this operation we have to use the method. So let's create a method, void calculation. Let's write this within this method. So see, this is the declaration of variable and this is the method. Here void is our return type and the name of the method is calculation. A method is denoted with a return type, then the name of the method with the bracket sign, and in between that whatever operation you want to perform, you can perform it right over here. See, we have given the command to print the total salary, but as you can see we don't have the main method over here. So if we will execute the command, it will give an error that you don't have a main method. See, we have got the error as could not find or load main class. So if you want to execute your program, you will be needing a main method. So this is the basic structure of your class. You can have as many variables as you want and you can have as many functions as you want. But to execute this, you will be needing an object of that class. So first of all, let's create a main method so that we can create an object to call the variables and function of this class. Public static void main. So now let's create an object, because without an object we can't access the data of a class. Let's try out the same. Suppose I need to assign the value of salary. Salary equal to 30,000. See, it has given me an error. Cannot make a static reference to the non-static field salary. I will tell you about the static field later on. But from this you can conclude that without an object we can't access the data of a class. So let's create an object first. Write the class name first, the employee, then the object name. Whatever name you want to give to your object, you can write it. This is the declaration of your object. So if you will see at the declaration of the object, you will find that it is something similar to declaration of a variable. We have the data type, then the variable name. Similarly, we have the class name and the object. We can write it like this and this. Both are doing the same function. So when I assign a equal to 100 and b equal to 200, what a and b is having are the values of integer type. Similarly, Steve and Paul will have the employee. That means Steve will have a salary, Steve will have a bonus, and Steve will have a vacation. And similarly for the Paul, both of them will have the access to all of the data in the class. So now let's instantiate the object. Write the name of the object equal to sign. We have to create a new object. So write new employee, the class name, semicolon. We have instantiated. So what does that mean? That means a new copy of a class is created for the object Steve. Now let's create the same for the Paul. So from this you can conclude that each object maintains its separate copy of the class. So whenever you create an object for the class employee, it will have the separate copy of the class of its own. So now let's check what does that mean. Let's delete it out. Before starting that, I will tell you one more method to declare and instantiate the object. Write employee, then the object name, let it be Raj, is equal to new, then again employee. See, it is the another way to declare and instantiate the object. So now let's see how each object creates a separate copy of a class. We have the first object as Steve. So Steve will has his own salary, own bonus and own vacations. So let's enter the salary. Let it be 50,000. Steve will have his bonus and Steve will have his vacations. See, what I have done over here is I have assigned the value of salary, bonus and vacation for the Steve object. And then at last we have calculated the pay. So let's execute the command and see the output first. See, your total salary is 67,000. So what we have got the output over here is the output for Steve. Suppose without any modification to the program, I just call the calculation method for the object Paul. So what will be the output? Let's execute the command. See, we have got the output as 0.0. Why is it so? Because as I have told you, whenever you create a new instance of a class, a new copy of that class is created for that object. So that means Paul will have his own salary, own bonus, own vacation and his own total salary. So let's execute the command again and see the output. See, we have got a different output for Paul. So from this you can understand that an object is something which creates a copy of a class. And there is one more important thing, that whatever variable you declare in the class is the instance variable. That means the variable that is created inside a class but outside the method or constructor or any block is called as an instance variable. Instance variable, that means our salary, bonus, vacation, total salary doesn't get the memory at the compile time. It will get the memory when an instance of an object is created. So the lifespan of the instance variable is from the creation of an object to the destruction of an object. So this is the important point to be noted. So object is something that has a copy of class, or you can say that instance of a class, and class is a template. Class is a structure that is being used by the object. So now let's move on to our presentation and see the basic definition and the real life example of the class and object. So what is a class? A class can be defined as a blueprint or a template that describes the state and behavior of the object. A class can contain data members, member functions, another class, blocks, constructor, interface, etc. So you can imagine class as a type of capsule which contains state and behavior. State means data members, field, variables, and behavior means member functions, method, constructor or block. Behavior is something that is used to define your state. So the next question is, what is an object? Objects have state and behavior. As I have told you, class contains state and behavior of an object. So object have state and behavior. So let's take the example. So we have two persons over here. You can choose either of them. Both of them will be having a state and a behavior. So the state will be like gender, age, color, and the behavior will be like eat, sleep, work out. Objects are just the generalized form of the real world. You can take any example. Suppose you are having a pen. So what will be the state? Its state will be like color, its company name, its texture. And what will be the behavior? Its behavior will be its writing. So this will be all about classes and object. See, there is one more important point which I forgot to mention in the program. That is, there are different ways to create an object. We have created our first object by using new keyword. Then there is a concept of anonymous object. And there are three more different ways to create an object. I have told you the first one. I will tell you the second one because this is quite interesting. And I will like you to tell me the three different ways of creating an object. If you will not able to find those ways, I will let you know. So let's have a look at the anonymous object. Go to your Eclipse. So to create an anonymous object, what you need to do is you have to write new, then the class name, and then the variable or the function you would like to call. I will call the function, so I will be writing calculation. That will be all. Just execute the command and see, a new instance of that object is created and we have got the output. But as you can see, we have not given any object name. So anonymous object is an object that has no references. If you have to use an object only once, anonymous object is a good approach. So that will be all for this tutorial. Method overloading comes under another important concept of object-oriented approach, that is polymorphism. So what is polymorphism? Polymorphism means which can take more than one form. There are basically two types of polymorphism. The first one is the method overloading, which we will be learning right now, and the second one is method overriding. We will learn about method overriding during inheritance. So now let's start with method overloading. What is method overloading? If a class have multiple methods by same name but different parameters, that is method overloading. For example, you can see I have the same method name Kelsey for each of the example, but different number of arguments within the bracket. And the main advantage of method overloading is that it increases the readability of the program. Let's take a simple and practical approach. Go to your Eclipse, create a program. Let's take two integers right now. We have created our class successfully. Now to access these variables and function, I need to create a main method. So I have created a main method and I will be creating an object now. Class name, that is calculation. Give a name to your object. Mine is C1. See, we have created our object successfully. Now we will call the function C1.Kelsey. Let's execute and see the output. See, we have got the output as 0 because we haven't assigned any value to A or B. Now let's overload this method. So copy paste the same thing. See, I have copy pasted. That's why it has given me an error that duplicate method Kelsey in type calculation. So what will happen if I pass the value as int D and int E? The error has gone. So now if you would like to print the statement, you have to change this to D plus E, or you can assign the value of A and B to D or E. You can either do this or you can do like this. Both will work the same way. I have just added the numbers. So now let's call the other function C1. The object will be same. We will be calling the other function. It is asking me for the value. Let's enter 500. Value for E, let's enter 200. Now let's execute the command and see the output. See, we have got our output as 700. You can use this function any number of times. Copy paste it again. Give another variable int f, add f to it, and again call the function with different variables. See, now execute. We have again got the output as 1300. So it doesn't matter how many times you use the same function until or unless you are passing the different number of arguments. So this is the first way to overload a method. There is another way to overload the method, that is, let's copy paste it out again, Control C, Control V, and I will just delete this for now. Now change this parameter with different data type. Let's take double. As we have entered double, the duplicate method error has gone, but we are getting an error over here. Why? Because D and E are of double data type and C is of integer data type. So either I have to convert that into a double or I have to explicitly convert this. Let's call our function Kelsey. Let's pass the value 10.2, 20.5. Now let's execute the command again. See, we have got the output as 30.7. That is correct. So these are the two different ways of overloading a method. That is, the first one is by changing the number of arguments. We have used 0 arguments over here, then 2 arguments over here, and then I have shown you the example with the 3 arguments. And the another way of using the method overloading is by changing the data type. So this is how you can overload the methods. There is one more important point, that Method overloading is not possible by changing the return type of the method. That is, void over here is our return type. We can't overload the method by changing the return type. Void means empty, that is 0. So that means your calc function will not return any value. So it will just enter the block of code, it will print the statement, and that's it. It will not return any value. Suppose if I change the return type from void to int, it will give an error that this method must return a result of type integer. That means I must have to return a value. And now the error has gone and my function will return a value c. So let's execute the command and see the output first. Your value is 700 because it is printing the same statement, but we haven't used the value which we are getting from the return function. So what you need to do is, you can either comment it out like this and take a variable of integer type, pass the function, and let's print out the value. See, what I have done is, whatever will be the output of this function, so I have taken the output of this function in the result variable. So our result variable will contain the value of c, and then at last I have printed the result. So let's execute the command. See, we have got the output as 1100. So this is how you can use the method overloading. Well, there is a limitation that method overloading is not possible by changing the return type of the method. See, I have changed the return type of the method to be int. Now let's change the return type of this method to double, and rest of the thing will be same. Let's return the value, return c. The first one is the integer and the second one is the double, and the argument in the function are the same. So it has given me a compile time error that duplicate method calc integer in type calculation. So using method overloading by changing the return type is prohibited in Java. It is because there is a chance of ambiguity error. So let's change it to void again. So this will be all about method overloading. In this tutorial, we will learn about constructor. Constructor is a special type of method which is created to initialize the object. That is, it constructs the value to the object. So you can suppose constructor as a drink which is offered to you every time you enter your home. So a drink can be of any type. It can be a plain water, it can be cola, it can be a juice. Similarly, constructor is a type of method which can hold any value or statement. There is one more important point about constructor, that every class has a constructor. Yes, that's what I said, that every class has a default constructor. Now you might be surprised because we are studying the constructor for the first time over here, and before that we have created almost 20 programs. We haven't used constructor anywhere. So how come we have constructor in every class? We have a default constructor in every class, but we will not be able to see it in our program. Why is it so? Because our source file is .java file in which we code our program, but when we compile our program, it is converted into a bytecode. That is our .class file. That .class file contains the program with constructor. So if we do not explicitly write a constructor for a class, the Java compiler build a default constructor for that class. So this is an important point to be noted. So now let's move on and see the rules of the constructor. The first rule says that name should be same as the name of class, and the second rule says that no return type. So now let's create our program and test both the rules. Go to Eclipse. I have created a class teacher. So now let's build a constructor. Constructor has to be the same name as of the class, so we have written the same name. Now just to test the constructor, let's print a line. See, I have just made a constructor. The constructor name is same as that of the class name, and we have not given any return type. What will happen if I give a return type like int? It will give an error. The error is this method has a constructor name. So when you are using a constructor, you don't have to mention a return type. It will give an error. So now we have created our constructor. Create an object now. See, we have created the object. We don't have to call the teacher constructor separately. Whenever we create an object that is instance of a class, the constructor is automatically called. So let's execute the command and see the output. As you can see in the console window, we have our output as where is your assignment. So just by the initialization of your object, your constructor is called. This is our default constructor. You can use the constructor similarly as you use the method, but the only difference is that it will not have a return type. Our another kind of constructor is parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructors are same as the methods we have studied in our method overloading. That means we can pass different number of arguments within the constructor. Let's have a look with the program. Now see, I have created another constructor with the argument. I have just passed a single argument within the brackets. So this is your parameterized constructor. You can pass a single argument or you can pass any number of arguments. I have passed a single argument and have printed a statement for the same. So now let's call our constructor. We have to create another object. Let's give it a name T2 and we have to pass a value. Let's pass Paul. The name has been passed and we have created an object. So let's execute the command and see the output. You can see in the console window we have got our desired output. So these are the two types of constructor. You can use it either way, and remember, whichever constructor you would like to call, you have to mention it while creating your object. So this will be all for the types of constructor. Now let's have a look at the constructor overloading. As we have studied in our previous tutorial about the method overloading, similarly constructor overloading can be done. The only difference is that there is no return type. So now let's move on with the constructor overloading, and then I will tell you few important points of constructor. See, here I have created another constructor with the same name as the class name, but with different arguments. I have passed two arguments this time. In our previous example, I have passed only one argument. In this constructor, I have taken a bit different example so that I will let you know that you can perform any function within the constructor. I have taken the marks of two subjects, then I have added the marks, then I have given a statement to print roll number and name, which will be passed by a constructor when the object is created, and then the total marks, that is the calculation of this, will be printed. So let's create an object. See, I have created an object T3 and passed the two values. The first one is the integer value for the roll number and the second one is the name. Now let's execute the command and see the output. See, we have got the output as roll number 4, name Paul, your total marks is 170. So this is how constructor overloading can be performed. So this will be all about the constructor. Our next important point in constructor are the copy constructor. So let's see how copy constructor works in Java. Create a new program, because this program is looking a bit messy. So let's create a program. I have created a new class teacher2. Let's create a function. I have created the same function, that is parameterized constructor. Let's take a name. Now let's create an object. We have created an object. Let's execute the command and see the output first. Stand up on the bench, Mr. John. So we are getting the right output till now. So now let's see how to use a copy constructor. So for creating a copy constructor, what you need to do is you have to write the name of the constructor teacher2, then have to pass the class name within the brackets with the object type. So now we have created the structure of copy constructor. Let's pass in the value name is equal to our object t2 dot. We have used the name string, so we will be passing the name and we will be copy pasting the same statement. So this will be all. Now let's create an object and test our copy constructor. We will pass the t, put a semicolon, that will be all. Now let's execute the command and see the output. See, in the first we have got our desired output as stand up on the bench Mr. John, but in the second we are getting a null value. So why we are getting a null value? It's because we have not assigned any value to this name. In our first parameterized constructor, we have passed the value from here to the argument over here, and this value is being printed. So if you would like to have the same output, you have to assign the value to this name. So what you need to do is just change the argument to n, name equal to n, and that will be all. So now what you have done is you have passed the value of this argument n to the variable name. So now this name will be printed over here and the value of this name will be copied over here to this name. So now let's execute the command and see the output. See, we are getting both the output as John. So this is how your copy constructor works. So this will be all for the constructor and copy constructor. There are few important points I would like to tell. The first one is that as we have seen in our programs that constructor doesn't have a return type. So now my first question to you is, does constructor returns any value? Yes, constructor returns a value, that is class instance. But still constructor can't have a return type. That is the first major point. The second important thing is constructor cannot be abstract, final or static. I will tell you about all of these in our later tutorials, but for now just remember it like this: constructor cannot be abstract, final or static. Constructor can have any specifiers, like I can add public before the constructor, I can add private before the constructor. So I can use any of the access specifier depending upon the program and the use of constructor. It will not give me an error until or unless I am using it the right way. So these are the few important points that you have to know about copy constructor and constructor. In this tutorial we will learn about inheritance. So let's take an example. Suppose it's your 20th birthday and your father bought a brand new Audi car. Don't start jumping on your seat. It's not for you. He bought it for himself. Yes, he bought it for himself. But being his son, you have the privilege of using his car. Similarly, inheritance is a mechanism by which you can use the property of a parent class in the child class. That is, you can derive a new class from the old one. So our first point says that inheritance is a relationship. Our fourth and fifth point says that is the old class, the first class which we have created, will be called as a parent class, a superclass or a base class. And the new class which will be derived from the old one, that is inherited one, will be called as a child class, subclass or derived class. And the last point says that extends keyword is used to use inheritance. So these are the few basic important points about inheritance. We will see it with the practical approach, but first of all let's have a look at the types of inheritance. There are basically 5 types of inheritance. The first one is the single inheritance, second is multi-level, third is hierarchical, fourth is multiple, and fifth is the hybrid. Generally we use single, multi-level and hierarchical inheritance. Multiple and hybrid inheritance are used very rarely because it increases the complexity. But still we will have a look at all of them in our later tutorials. But first we will start with these 3. So our first kind is single inheritance. In single inheritance there are 2 classes. The first one is the parent one and the second one is the child. Then is our multi-level. In this we can have any number of classes, and each and every child class will have its parent class till we reaches the top of inheritance. As you can see in the example, the child class has a parent class as father and the father class has a parent class as grandfather. So from here we can conclude that it can move up to any levels. The third one is the hierarchical. That is, it will be having one parent and any number of child. So let's start with the single inheritance. So now let's go to Eclipse and create our classes. See, I have created a class called family, and then I have created 2 classes. The first one is the father and the second one is the son. So let's put some data in the class. In the first class, that is father class, we have created a function called allMine. Similarly, in the son class we have created a function that is void already mine. So as you can see, I have created 2 simple classes with 2 different functions. So to inherit the father class in the son class, what you need to do is go to class son, then write extends and then the parent class name, that is father. As you can see, now we have inherited the property of the father class in the son class. Now we will call the object of the son class, and by using the object of the son class we will try to call the function of the father class. So let's create the object of the son class. As you can see, from inheritance onwards we will be creating the objects in a different class. It will not be an inherited class or a parent class, it will be a different class. We have declared our main method. It doesn't matter what you write over here, you can pass any argument you would like if I write C, it will not give me any error. Now you might be wondering why we are using a different class to call the object. It is because if I will use the main method in the child class, then what will be the use of inheritance? So when you start doing inheritance, it's a best practice that you create your classes separately with the inheritance, and afterwards you create a class to call the main method. So let's create the object of the son class. Now let's call the function of the son class s dot already mine. Now let's call the function of the father class s dot. When you put the dot operator, it will show you the number of method or variable that are available to be used by the object. So we have our method all mine. Let's enter. So this will be all. Let's execute the command and see the output first. You can see in the console window we have got our output. I have something of mine too. That means we have called the method of the son class, and then in the second line we have got the output. I will have everything that my father have. That means I have got the property of the father class also. Similarly, you can try it with the variables. It will work the same way. Let's take a variable integer money. I have declared the variable over here in the father class and have used the variable in the statement. So now let's give the value to the variable. We will call the variable using the object of the son class, that is s dot. See, on the very first menu item you will see the variable money. Let's give it a value. Let's write 50 lakh rupees. So this will be all. Now we have assigned the value to that variable using the object of the son class. So let's execute the command and see the output first. See, I have got the output as I will have everything that my father have, and rupees 50 lakhs. So this is how a son class can inherit the property of a father class. That is, the data members and the functions can be inherited in the son class using the extend keyword in inheritance, and can be called by the object of the son class. There is one more important thing. Down here you can see when I created the object, this time I haven't written that instance of a class or object creation. I have written object and reference of child class. We have created the new object using the keyword new, and we have given the reference of the child class, that is son class. On the left hand side of this statement, the son denotes the reference, and from s equal to new son, it denotes the creation of the object. So we have passed the reference of the son class, that is this class, and we have created the object of the same class. I am just giving you the brief about the object and reference because it will be helpful when I will be telling you about the runtime polymorphism and upcasting of object. Now let's have an example of the multi-level inheritance. As you can see, multi-level inheritance is something similar to that of single inheritance, except for one thing, that we can extend it to any number of classes. So now let's create our program and see how it can be achieved. Go to Eclipse. See, I have created a new class called family2, and in between that I have created 3 more classes. The first one is the class grandfather that has a function called property. As we all know, our ancestors only have the property that time. So I have taken the function property. Our fathers have all the money, so I have taken a function called money, and that our class father2 has extended to grandfather. That means father class will extend the property of grandfather, and then our third class is son2 that will extend from the property of father2, and we have taken a function called you. That means I love you, I have you both. So I think son2 is smart over here. He knows if he will behave properly, he will get the properties of both the classes. That is, he will get the property from the grandfather and he will get the money from the father. So let's create our object first. See, we have created the object and the main method in the next class. I have told you about this, why we have created a new class in our previous tutorial. So let's call the function of all the 3 classes first. It will work same as that of the single inheritance. See, we have called all the 3 functions from all the 3 classes using the object of the son class. Now let's execute the command and see the output first. As you can see, we have got our desired output. The function from the grandfather class, the function from the father class, and the function from the son class. So this is how you can achieve multi-level inheritance. But there are two more important aspects I will like to tell. Now let's take a variable over here, int some money. Okay, our grandfather would be having some money, and now let's see, can we use that variable that we have declared in the class grandfather in the class father too. So now let's get the total money, int total money. Now let's create a function to add them both. Suppose father 2 is having 50 lakhs with him. So this will be all. Now let's just print the output SYSO. Here we have printed the total money. So now let's assign the value to some money variable, s2 dot some money. So let's take only 10 lakh rupees from grandfather. That will be all. And then we have a function called sum that will perform the summation of your money. So let's call that s2 dot sum. So as you can see, I have assigned the value to the variable of the grandfather class, then have called the function of the father class, and then have called the function that will print the output. So let's execute the command now. See, we have got the output as 60 lakh rupees, that is the 10 lakh from the grandfather and 50 lakhs from the father. So this is how you can call the variable and method of the parent class to the child class. There is one more important thing. Suppose I forgot to write this method and I wrote it like this. So now tell me, will the output be same as that of the previous one, or I will get a different output? Let's execute the command and see the output. See, we have got the output as 50 lakh rupees only. I haven't got 10 lakh rupees extra that was from my grandfather class. So from this you can understand that a class can have a method and a variables. If I have to perform a function, I have to call it in the method. So this is how you can perform multi-level inheritance. There is one more important concept which came into limelight with the inheritance, that is runtime polymorphism. I will tell you about the runtime polymorphism in detail in our later tutorial, but in this tutorial let's have a brief about the runtime polymorphism. Runtime polymorphism means you will have the method with the same name in your classes. So at the runtime, JVM will decide which method to call. So let's create a method with the same name in all the classes. So as you can see, I have created the same method showLove in all of the three classes, but all of the three methods have different print statement. So now let's call the function showLove, s2 dot showLove. So now let's execute the command and see the output first. See, the output is I love my father and grandfather. See, we have got the output of the son2 class. So what happened over here is that when you create a method of the same name and same number of arguments in different classes, then the last class in inheritance which contains your method, that class method will be executed first. So we are getting the output of the son2 class. As you can see on the left hand side of the line number 39, we have a green arrow mark. If you take your mouse to that, you will see overrides object oriented dot father to showLove. That means this method over here overrides the method of the father2 class. And again you can see we have a green mark on the 28th line. It overrides the method of the grandfather class. So this is the basic about the runtime polymorphism. In our next tutorial, we will learn about the runtime polymorphism and upcasting of object in details. And afterwards, we will have a look at the hierarchical inheritance. Thank you.